Hello and welcome to Startup Street. I'm Shruti Mishra. These are the top headlines from the startup space. SoftBank swings to profit for the first time in 3 quarters after selling significant stake in its crown jewel Alibaba for $37 billion. But the Vision Fund, which invests heavily in tech stocks, has lost nearly $10 billion last quarter. SoftBank invested just under $100 million in the crypto exchange FTX and anticipates writing down the entire value of the stake in the December quarter, Bloomberg News reported. Sequoia Capital earlier put out a statement reassuring investors its exposure was limited, saying it wrote down the full value. Top executives continue to walk out of Twitter, and Elon Musk hints at a potential bankruptcy as his ownership of the company enters the third week. Fake Twitter accounts flock to get a blue check mark, creating chaos for several companies, brands, and individuals. Media-focused SaaS unicorn Amagi has raised over $100 million, including $80 million in primary capital from General Atlantic. The investment brings the company's valuation to $1.4 billion. With this funding, the startup will invest in AI-driven personalization, advertising, and live streaming solutions. Even Healthcare, a subscription-based personalized healthcare startup, raises $15 million from new investors, including AlphaWave and Lightrock. The firm will use the fresh capital to strengthen its clinical team of doctors to scale its preventive care for comorbidities. Indonesia's largest internet company, GoTo Group, is planning to cut more than 1,000 jobs as it seeks to trim costs and shore up its finances, according to Bloomberg News. The reduction, equal to more than 10% of the workforce, will affect all divisions. Well, those are the headlines we're tracking for you this evening. One of the agenda of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, in Egypt is against the backdrop of inadequate ambition to curb greenhouse gas emissions. According to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, CO2 emissions need to be cut 45% by 2030 compared to 2010 levels to meet the Central Paris Agreement goal of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Now, this is crucial to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, including more frequent and severe droughts, heat waves, and rainfall. Renewable energy, transition fuels, and climate-smart agriculture are some priorities that will play a role in ensuring a sustainable future, and startups are well-positioned to lead from the front. To discuss this further, joining me now are Kunal Prasad, co-founder of agtech startup Cropin, and Inderveer Singh, founder and CEO of all-electric commercial vehicle startup Evage. Gentlemen, welcome to Startup Street. Inderveer, let me start with you. Sustainability is the need of the hour. If you could tell us what the environment is like at the COP27 summit. What have some of your conversations on sustainability with other leaders been like?
It is amazing to be here at the COP27 summit. The amount of people, amount of businesses, governments here with just a single aim to improve sustainability in this world. It's just amazing to see this environment. The atmosphere is electric, it's contagious, and it feels great to be heading a company that is focusing on sustainability at its core. Discussions right now has been the fact that the whole world is going through an energy crisis. And examples have been taken about Sweden, Denmark, for example, who have their own sustainable means of creating energy. And energy prices have not been impacted into these countries, but Europe is struggling because they were not on a sustainable energy path. And these are the core discussions that are circling around: how to have sustainability, how to end greenhouse emissions, how to become carbon neutral in the future. And this has been the core of our discussion so far.
Okay, all right. Coming to you now, Kunal. Kunal, Cropin too was invited at the COP27 summit to talk about the opportunities for inclusive microfinance to lead transformative climate adaptation impact at scale. What's your pitch?
I mean, from an agriculture perspective as well, agriculture both is a contributor as well as a institution which is actually impacted by climate change, and that's what we are trying to showcase over there. That when you're talking about inclusive microfinance, the microfinance is mostly available to the top of the pyramid, the largeholder farmers. But when a smallholder farmer goes for access to finance, to help them in terms of getting access to seeds, fertilizers, drip irrigation systems, and all, they do not have that. And that is the biggest challenge that the entire agriculture community is facing. That how do you bring sustainable microfinance to the smallholder farmers so that they can get access to seeds, fertilizers, and all of them so that they can produce. And that's the bigger challenge that is being faced in countries across Africa. That if you do not have the right seeds or the fertilizers, how do you grow? And that's the massive challenge that is being faced all across. What we are hearing also is that every single week we are going to see 1 million households getting into acute hunger, and that's the problem that the Africa is going to face. So I think the biggest opportunity right now is to use technology. How do you bring innovative solutions to reduce the risk and get access to microfinance for smallholders?
Yes, and we will delve into that a little later. But coming back to you, Indervi, you spoke at the summit on the role of renewable energy and transition fuels to help India towards its target of net zero emissions. So what does this road look like for India? What role can renewable energy play?
So India is a growing economy. We are among the fastest growing economies in the world right now. The demand for energy, the demand for resources to grow is going to be enormous pressure on the government. And there's a need to have renewable sources which are powering this growth, because that's the only way we can have a sustainable growth cycle. Gone are the days where industrialization was a factor that was defining your growth. Now it is how sustainable, how self-sufficient you are as a country, which will define the future and create a stronger economy for the whole citizens around it.
Okay, coming to you, Kunal, now, you spoke about the use of technology. With your product Crop and Cloud, you aim to advance how technology can solve critical planet-scale challenges such as food security, climate-resilient agriculture, and reducing the environmental impact of farming. If you could elaborate on how you're doing this, and if you could also share some use cases.
Thanks. So from a technology perspective, we are having a cloud platform, which is one of the first innovative technology platforms for agriculture globally that we have launched. And this platform is basically going to revolutionize the way that agriculture is being practiced, both at the farm level as well as institutional level. From the technology perspective, when we talk about food crisis, it's all about knowing what is available. And that's where you see innovative satellite-based, remote sensing-based technologies, which can actually forecast that what is the cropping pattern going to be this season and how much yield is going to come. And this basically will help organizations both at the public and the private sectors to understand that how is the food supply going to be, and so that they can mitigate the risk from a food scarcity situation. On the climate piece as well, similarly, when you talk about climate resilient agriculture, it's all about how do you address the challenge faced by the smallholder farmers? It could be in terms of either adaptation or mitigation activities, helping them know exactly where they are located, what weather conditions are going to be there, what crop they should plant, when they should plant, to exactly managing the right package of practices during the agriculture so that they can maximize the yield per acre and then help them to get.
Sure.
So these are different things that are there.
All right. So clearly, climate-smart agriculture seems to be the way forward to a sustainable future. But Kunal, stubble burning and air pollution problems are perennial in North India. Do we have a long-term solution to tackle this issue once and for all?
I think agriculture requires investments to solve this problem. There has to be incentives. There has to be also mechanization. We know about the problem that the farmers face, that they have to rotate and they have to go to the next crop in very fast manner. And we need machines to basically build that particular stubble back into the soil or take it away, right? So it needs investments. It also needs commitment from the farmers that they really want to do that. Plus also moving from the traditional crops that they have been growing, which is also water intensive, which is not sustainable for areas in Punjab or Haryana, to get into other crops which can be more rewarding for the farmers, and helping the farmers to get into those crops sustainably. So these are some of the areas which would require investments, which will also require markets. And I think that's the way that the overall collective mechanism, from access to finance, getting them the right stakeholders, and the enablement from the government can support this particular problem to be solved on a longer term basis.
Okay, interesting points made there, Kunal. Let me go back to Indervi. Indervi, let's talk about e-wage. What has your journey in sustainability been like? What's the growth been like for you?
So the journey of EVH is more like the journey of sustainability in India. We started off trying to develop sustainable needs of transportation in 2014. And when I started off making these electric trucks, a lot of the consultants were saying that there's hardly any electrification potential in India, because these vehicles are simply made for the developed world. They are super expensive and they will not just fly in a developing nation like India. But a decade hence, we are seeing that electrification is the buzzword around here in India. There's a concentrated focus on moving towards cleaner energy sources, cleaner vehicles to power the country. So that has been my journey. It has been a decade, and from being an outlier to the main stage. That has been the journey of EVH, and that has been India's journey as well.
All right, but tell us, what kind of innovations is EVH bringing in and the kind of impact it will have?
So at EVH, our genesis is to create sustainable transportation. We're trying to create an organization, a company that is sustainable in its core values. It's just not about producing vehicles. It's about producing them in a more efficient manner. It's about creating efficiency for the people who use our vehicle. And that's where EVH is focusing on. For example, recently we talked about batteries. Our batteries have an ultra long life of more than 10,000 cycles, which means these cells can run for 10 to 15 years. That means lesser number of things have to be mined out from the core of the earth. And that is one way of looking at sustainability. We are making our trucks in modular micro factories, M-cubes as we call them, right? Now, instead of deforesting thousands of acres of land to create one factory, we can do it at maybe 1/10 or 1/50th of the size of a traditional factory. So these are just a few examples how we are creating sustainable manufacturing solutions for the green revolution in India.
All right, so it's all about creating efficiency. One final question to you, Inderveer. What, according to you, are the biggest challenges when it comes to sustainability for India and for EVH?
Any transition from a traditional means of doing business to a new means of business, there's a lot of risk that is involved in such transitions. And to support that risk, you need risk capital, investments flowing into infrastructure to develop these kind of ecosystems and for these products to fly off. So there would be a concentrated need to invest into creating an ecosystem which is going to be super efficient, super helpful for transition. And I guess that is the biggest challenge that we will face. And as EVH as well, we need to, the demand is huge right now. Our target is to be focusing on creating investments and ecosystems for our customers to run these vehicles efficiently and sustainably.
All right. We've completely run out of time. Inderveer and Kunal, many thanks for joining us on Startup Street today and wish you the both very best for all your growth plans. Moving on, in an attempt to deliver quality healthcare services to rural India, medtech startup Sigtuple has deployed its AI-powered technology to automate the manual microscopy process across the entire pathology network of Krishna Diagnostics. My colleague Aishwarya Anand checked into one of Krishna's pathology labs in Punjab's Mohali to understand how artificial intelligence is making diagnosis faster and more accurate. Take a look.
Despite being home to over 70% of Indians, rural and non-metro areas face a significant shortage of quality diagnostic services.
Medtech startup Sigtuple, along with diagnostic players like Krishna Diagnostics, is aiming to bridge the gap by leveraging AI to deliver efficient and quality services into the hinterlands of India.
We are here at one of their centers in Mohali to see how they are bringing digital healthcare services to the rural population.
Diagnostics is very crucial to establish treatment. Now, in a place like Ruru, where the sample gets transferred to a place like Shimla, at some places it takes 12 hours, some places it takes 24 hours. So the entire treatment is delayed. Considering these are far-off places, so obviously there are not much volumes, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve that quality of care which is there in any tier 1 city. There are other fields in which digitization is always there and it has changed our lives a lot. But what we also need is a value for money proposition which is much better in terms of quality without compromising. And then the love happened with Sigtuple.
Krishna has deployed Sigtuple's automated digital microscopy AI-100 across 3 states, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh and Maharashtra, with plans to digitize its entire network of pathology labs. Currently, Krishna has deployed 25 such machines.
What we do today is basically we try to make the life of the pathologist simpler by automating the most cumbersome part of their task. Now, if you look around in this lab, you'll see most of the job is being done by machines, which give out numbers. But there are certain functions in this lab which require manual screening, which is basically looking at a sample under a microscope. Basically, we automate that process through AI and robotics. The robotics is an automated digital microscope which can take in a physical sample and convert it into microscopic digital images. And those images are transported to a cloud-based platform, AI platform. What the AI does is tries to mimic what a doctor would have done by looking at the sample under the microscope. It basically picks up the different kinds of cells, different types of abnormalities and all that. And that result is then presented to the doctor on a web browser, which makes it accessible from anywhere, anytime. So AI 100 is the only hardware that is there we have now. But unlike most other medical devices, this single hardware is able to do multiple types of tests. So today we have commercially released the solution for blood cell analysis. There we are going to release the solution for urine cell analysis in the coming 2 to 3 months.
The tie-up between Krishna and Sictuple is helping reduce the turnaround time, standardize reporting quality, and increase efficiency in delivering quality healthcare services to the rural population.
This technology is used for abnormal patients, the patients who really need the diagnosis fast. So the way the technology and the collaboration of Sictuple technology with the existing hematology analyzers are helping us. First is 24/7 service which is available. So the hematology report, or predominantly the digital CBC report, can be availed at any point of time within a desired 2 hours. Second takeaway is emergency reports. Emergencies can arise anytime, anywhere, and for any patient. Third part in terms of the patients is his money is saved further, because he need not waste time giving the sample and then coming back again for collecting the report, then coming back again the third time to take an appointment for the doctor. One visit, his sample is given, his report is generated, and he gets a consultation also.
Data and AI in the healthcare industry can potentially add $25 to $30 billion in India's GDP by 2025, as per a NASSCOM report. Now, given the potential, there is no doubt that AI and digital health will continue to gain prominence in the coming years. While the challenges remain, a robust infrastructure, proper implementation, and cooperation between private and public players can definitely help scale digital health in India. With camera person Saroj Singh, Aishwarya Anand for CNBC-TV18.
With that, it's time for us to take a short break. Coming up on the show, early-stage technology-focused venture capital fund Chirate Ventures recently announced the first close of its fundraising towards its growth stage portfolio. A special conversation with founder Sudhir Sethi on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Startup Street. Early-stage technology-focused venture capital fund Chirate Ventures recently announced the first close of its fundraising towards its growth stage portfolio. CNBC-TV18's Ritu Singh caught up with Sudhir Sethi, founder and chairman Chirate Ventures, and began by asking him about the expected capital deployment by the firm and investment plans going ahead. Listen in.
This fund is focused on predominantly our own portfolio, Series C and above. So if you look at our portfolio, in the last 2 years, they've raised about $1 billion each. Typically, we are venture investors, so we don't invest in growth stage. So we saw an opportunity of our investors participating in the growth stage, which is why we raised capital for our first growth fund. And I was very surprised and pleasantly surprised, because our investors backed us. And our first closing was above the cover and in 3 months' time. So we will close by the end of, I think we are already oversubscribed, and we will continue to be oversubscribed. What's very important is that these are Series C and above companies, and they are raising for growth. If I take layer 1 of these companies, they're raising the largest of the companies. Yeah, if you take the larger of the companies, they're raising for growth, and the growth can be organic or through acquisitions. So if you look at First Cry, it's gone to Middle East. If you look at Lenskart, it's gone to US organically, Singapore, and to Middle East organically. But they've also acquired Onday as such, which has taken them to 15 countries. If you look at Global Bees, they've acquired 26 companies in the last 18 months. If you look at Cure Foods, they've acquired 7 companies.
So you're going to continue supporting their expansion plans in India and overseas?
Yeah. We will be part of the consortium who is into our late-stage companies and continue to support their expansion plans through organic and acquisitions.
And these sound like largely companies that are already in your portfolio.
They are all in our portfolio.
Okay, these 15 to 20 that you...
Yes, they're all in our portfolio.
How soon will you be signing these checks? Because you're waiting for that, close of the fund, perhaps by December?
Yeah, we should close by December. Our cycle for investing is 2 years.
Okay, and what would the total pool look like, what you're expecting by
It's difficult to say right now. Once we do the closure, we will know. But we should be substantially oversubscribed.
And the average check sizes, if you could give us a sense
we will
as well?
be investing anywhere between 7.5 million, 5 to 7.5 on the lower side, and the higher side 15 to 20 million.
What's the total AUM? The last figure we had was about $1.1 billion. Where do you expect it to go from here, and what's the current figure?
So the current figure is 1.1.
Okay.
And we are raising capital every year. We are investing about 100 million a year. So at this point of time, of course, as AUM grows, I can tell you, but currently we are 1.1 in AUM terms. And this is across 130 odd companies. We've exited 45, and we've done exits every year for the last decade. We would be the only VC firm who's done exits every year right now.
Well, exits is a large part of being a venture capital firm. So let me ask you then, any exits lined up in the near term?
We exit every year.
Yeah, so how many lined up, say, for the rest of the year, which is only less than 2 months?
We have a few.
Oh, think of the current scenario, because you're raising this growth fund at an interesting time. We're seeing what's happening in the US. There are mass layoffs at some of these tech companies. They're not growing as fast. And we're seeing the same trend getting mirrored in India as well. There are some sectors that are worse off. There are some that are slightly better. But what is your reading of the current scenario?
I think there is capital. However, the capital investments into startups and to late stage are delayed. There is questions on valuation, there's question on timing, and there is question on the whole space of how much quantum has to come in, right? If we have seen 2022 and 2021 as 2 years, 2022 is almost over, the capital raised by our companies in 2021 was 1.2 billion. We are now at 900 million.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what does that mean? It just means that entrepreneurs who have tightened the belt, reduced the burn substantially, hived off businesses which are not doing well, and have started growth, okay, which is profitable in nature, they are still attracting capital. And VC's goal is to make sure that many of these are in your portfolio.
From your portfolio of 70 companies itself, are you worried about some, perhaps at the smallest of the companies?
We're intensely worried about many.
Could you tell us about that?
There are companies whose burn is reduced, but they may not attract capital. Now I'll tell you why. When we invest in a company, there is a technology, there is a product, there is a business model, and there's a revenue model. All may become completely not valid at all in the change scenario when so much shocks have taken place.
Yeah.
Right? What was valid as a business model during good times is not valid today.
Yeah.
And those companies will not be able to raise capital. So yes, there are companies who worry us, but so typically VCs will back them and see if a pivot can take place. And if not, then we'll try to find a home, because some other companies may find a good thing as far as those companies are concerned.
Well, finally, you've been an early stage investor in a lot of what I may call the OG startups of India, right? The Flipkarts and the Mintras of the world. What are the lessons you draw from there, from what you're seeing now? Because, it was harder to raise capital back then and scale up, and now we have more than 100 unicorns, and some of them we've seen the kind of meltdown in valuations in just the last, 6 to 8 months. What are the lessons to be learned from, some of your
One
earlier?
big lesson: work with the entrepreneur, keep your head to the ground. Don't worry about valuations, worry about revenue, worry about profitability, and make sure that your
that's always true, but what is the...
It's always true, but I think many of us can get lost in the
exuberance.
bubble. Exuberance can be here. Yeah. Operating VCs, our background is operating. We believe keep to the ground. Keep your head to the ground.
Keep your head to the ground, says Sudhir Sethi. Moving on, Twitter dives into deeper chaos after top executives resigned from the platform, drawing a sharp warning from US regulators. This came a day after the launch of new features introduced by the platform's new owner, Elon Musk. Fake accounts have now gotten a blue tick and are creating chaos for several companies, brands and individuals. Brands like Eli Lilly, Nestle, Tesla and BP have been at the receiving end of pranks. But that's not all. In his first company-wide address since taking on the role of the Twitter's new boss, Elon Musk has reportedly raised the possibility of bankruptcy if Twitter does not start generating cash soon enough. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Startup Straight. More news and updates continue on the other side. Stay tuned.